I think that there's two different kind of directions that this conversation is going to go in. I mean, I say two directions. It could be 12 by the time we finish. I mean, who the hell knows? If you listen to us regularly, you know this could go many different ways.
Wishful thinking. It's like when my mom named me Serena. Like, oh, you think that's gonna happen, huh? Okay, buckle up.
Hello, and welcome to Well Shit. It really is that simple. I'm Claire.
And I'm Serena. On this podcast, we help you to understand about your 12 universal needs, why they are currently not being well met,
how to meet them in ways that work for you, and how to consistently do so in quick, easy, and simple ways that fit seamlessly into your life.
We'll also help you to understand how doing so will have a positive ripple effect in literally every area of your life.
If you like what you hear, sign up for more support with meeting your needs with your weekly Universal Needs notes at theuniversalneeds.com.
And enjoy the show.
Hello.
Hey, everyone.
Interesting times right now, I've got to say. I'm in the process of I know I've got to move out of my place in the next couple of months because there is an end point to my current accommodation. And I'm looking for somewhere and I haven't quite found the somewhere, but it means I'm not quite settled right now, but I know I'm going to move, but I don't know when I'm going to move. And I've got a really busy month coming up. My needs practice has never been more important. Okay. Breathe, keep my feet underneath me, stay resourced. And actually I'm feeling pretty good, even though it's a lot. It's a lot right now. I'm just hoping. I've got a couple of very busy weeks coming up, and I'm really hoping that the move doesn't end up falling in the middle of those busy weeks, because I've got a horrible feeling that could happen. I'm like, oh no, let's not do it then.
Well, tell me when you're not having a busy week, Claire.
Okay. Busier weeks. Okay.
Because if it's not those weeks, it's going to be weeks I'm there, and those are going to be busy too.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair.
That's why the needs practice is so important, because it's that little bit of a buffer that just kind of makes it life be lifing, and life it's never going to stop lifing. I don't think adulting in life gets significantly easier, in the sense we all have commitments, we all have stuff we have to do. There's big things like moves and jobs and bills and all of these things. And
I thought you said there's big things like boobs. I'm like,
oh,
I mean
that too.
Depending on your physique, yeah, maybe. I never thought about those being a significant thing I had to consider in my adulting. Yeah, but okay.
There's boobs of many kinds in adulting and lifing. Let me tell you that.
That's very true. Very true.
But that needs practice just kind of I feel like, we talk about this and we talk about how human we are and how life is still happening to us. It almost just takes the edge off of everything. And it's okay, I just feel a little bit more resourced in myself and able to.
A little more grounded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that in the chaos of this time, you have, once again found the grounding in the practice.
Right. I mean, that's kind of what it's there for, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting, times like this, I'm like, oh wow. Sometimes I think, because it's been such a part of my life for so long now, I think I sometimes forget how impactful it can be. And I'm like, and then I go through a time and then I'm like, oh, I think if I didn't have this, I might be hiding under the duvet with snacks and a movie. I mean, nothing's happening. To pretend nothing's happening out there. I just feel like it's just me and my snacks and my movie. That's it.
There's never been a time since I found out what a needs practice was that like I said, we're human. Sometimes we fall out of practice with our practice, and we'll do it. I mean, I don't think there's a day that I don't do some form of my needs practice, but there is something about doing it the way that it is kind of taught to be done. And the way we teach it, it can work. It can look in actually kind of a funny a funny connection to today's show, but it can look many different ways. And when you find that way that really resonates with you, that really makes the practice like, oh, okay. Like for Claire, she does it in her needs practice journal. I do it on my phone because the journal adds a step for me that doesn't serve me most of the time, but I do have one. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I need to pen and paper this out. But like we fall out of practice with it and we come back in and it's like, oh, it feels so good. Feels so good to be doing this again. We've never come back in and been like, yeah, I'm doing my needs practice again regularly.
Why am I doing this? Like, what is this for? Like never in all the times. And it's so funny you say about the journal. Like there are times when I like, maybe I'm out and about or I'm like traveling or something and I have to do it on my phone or what have you. But I would say 9 times out of 10, probably more than that, I do it in my journal. And just picking up my journal, I can feel the shift in my body. Like my entire body goes, oh yes, do that. That's a good idea.
It's funny because my journal isn't one that I use consistently, but when I see it, I'm like, oh, I know what's in there. Like, and it does. It makes me feel happy. It's like, I know my needs menu is in there, and if I needed it, there it is. Like, it's
right there. Makes all the difference. So, so today we're like the stuff we're talking about today is kind of like along. There's themes in what we've just been talking about that I think translate very well into what we're going to be discussing today.
And they weren't intentional, just so you know. No, like that wasn't a setup. It just kind of happened that way.
And so today we're going to be talking about choices and options, and how I think that until you start to recognize how options work, how choices work, until you start to realize how when you learn about it, the empowerment ecosystem and the creator approach and all those sorts of things work, it's amazing. Like we make so many decisions all day, every day. And the vast majority of them we're not even aware of. We don't really think about it. And we're not consciously making a choice. We're making a decision with either the options that have been presented to us, the options have been conditioned into believe we're choosing between, the options that we've chosen between previously. And it can end up really pigeonholing us and putting us into a situation where, I mean, let's be honest, we're never going to be in a situation where every choice is always going to be a choice that we like. I mean, we've always said there's a difference between not having a choice and not liking the choice that we have. And so often, I don't think we even think beyond what we see as the choices that are in front of us. And I think that there's 2 different kind of directions that this conversation is going to go in. I mean, I say 2 directions. It could be 12 by the time we finish. I mean, who the hell knows? If you listen to us regularly, you know this could go many, many different ways.
Wishful thinking. It's like when my mom named me Serena. Like, oh, you think that's gonna happen, huh? Okay, buckle up.
We're starting off with believing it's going to be 2 different directions. Who knows where we'll end up? But I think that the important thing here is recognizing that being mindful of the choices that we have and mindful of the outcomes that we want to create and exploring whether there are more options or whether there are different ways that those options could look is such a boon. I don't want to say such a boon to your personal power. It's not really a phrase that most people use, but it boosts your personal power. I'm assuming you've never heard that phrase before.
What was it?
Such a boon to your personal power.
A boon. Yeah, no, that's
no. I'm like, that might be a British thing. But like it can bolster it in a way that you don't really understand is possible. And I'm like, I've just realized I haven't told you I'm going to do this, but I'm going to kind of throw over to you for a second, because I know that this kind of came out of like some things that you have experienced and some things that you've seen. Like this, this podcast was your idea, and I'm kind of wanting to get your take on like where was the inspiration for doing this episode? Where did it come from? Because I think that there are a lot of people who are going to relate hard to some of the inspiration for why we're talking about this today.
Yeah, it came to me because there's a few relationships in my life where I've noticed that when it comes to options, it's either this or that. Like the option is A or it's B. And very, 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 very seldomly is the answer to whatever is being questioned
going on. Mm-hmm.
A or B. And I brought it up multiple times.
I think that the other thing is that because of the work we do and because we're so used to doing this now, that my take on it is that you've had conversations with people where they've gone, well, it's this or that, and you're like, I can see 23 different other possibilities here that they don't see. Not that they're ignoring intentionally, but just that they're like, that we've been so conditioned into the way that things are supposed to be that it doesn't even exist as a possibility, right?
Exactly. And it's like, you know, exactly what you said. It's like, oh, I get what you're saying. Like, those are two things, like this and that are options. And then there are
options.
So many other things. And, you know, as I was explaining it to Claire, I called it kind of like a spider chart. Like, in my mind, somebody says this or that, and my brain goes, and like, great timing. I should have just like not done the blows and let the machine do it for me.
The cat feeder do it for you.
Yeah, pour it out with all of the options all over the place. And it's a little bit of thinking outside of the box sometimes, because then, you know, I often see all of like a multitude of options. I don't always offer them because a lot of people just aren't in a space to receive them. I'll say, like, I can see a couple of different, you know, perspectives on this or different options in here. Yeah. And a lot of times it's like, oh, I didn't even think about that. And a lot of times when the situations I've been in, I'm like, it doesn't have to look the way that we've been taught it looks. Like, it can look so many different ways. Like, the reason why it looks a certain way is because it worked for a certain person in a certain situation with certain elements that all played along to make that situation be what made it work. And it's like the chances of something working perfectly, and I'm using perfectly so loosely, like perfectionism is something we've worked on. We have an episode about it. We'll throw the link in the show notes. Yes. But like perfectly with air quotes. The chances of it then working for somebody else in that exact same manner is going to be rare. And a lot of times these conditionings and these minds of thoughts and these options we're given come from like kind of generationally. A lot of this stuff is what was back in the day. Now, I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but times have changed multiple times over. And if I'm trying to do the same thing my grandparents are doing, chances are I'm going to feel a little bit disjointed in this world because like it just doesn't work like the same way.
There's a TV show that Serena and I both watch, both really enjoy, called Ghosts. And it's really interesting because it's there's, long story short is that there's this couple,
the American version.
The American version. I've watched both versions, and being a Brit, I can see why I enjoy the American version more. But I think there are certain things in the British version that are very British in nature in terms of the humor. And I'm like, yeah, you're not going to get this if you're not British. So I can see why, like, I mean, I was able to enjoy both. I still prefer the American version, but so if you're a Brit,
I've seen one episode of the British version and I was like, let me see the other one first.
Yeah, I've watched all of both of them, and as I said, it's I definitely enjoy the American version more. I find it funnier, and there are some things in the British one I'm like, see what you did there. I was watching last night where somebody made a comment, and I was like, it was like such an in joke, and I found it really funny, and I'm like, yep. 90% of people wouldn't have got that. Anyway, so there's this, and the premise of this show is that there's this couple and they inherit this basically mansion, like stately home kind of thing. And the woman in the couple, she accidentally falls down a flight of stairs. She technically dies for a few minutes, and when she comes back, she can actually see and interact with the ghosts that are living in the mansion. And the interesting thing about these ghosts is that they are from all eras through history. There's like an indigenous person, there's like a Viking person, there's somebody from like the Civil War, there's somebody from the kind of the like late
Victorian
1800s.
times.
Yeah, like early 1900s. There's a douchey bro from the 80s. There's somebody from the 20s. There's somebody from like the 70s. And it's like, and it's so interesting, like, because there's an episode actually in it where the one of the Victorian era people, the Victorian woman and the woman from the 20s are trying to give the current householder like advice, and she's like, your advice is out of date. And like there were some things about it that were a little out of date, like the Victorian woman's constantly trying to get everyone to take cocaine, for example. It's like, that's not actually helpful in this situation. I like the woman from the 70s
like
is always
anymore.
yeah, it's always high, so it's like it makes it like there's some like, and it's interesting because there are things that you get to kind of recognize about how generationally things have worked differently, and the things that have been needed in different times in order for things to work, and things that definitely are not needed anymore. But it's that same kind of thing. It's like you look at that the way that they did things, it's like for the time and where it was, it might have made sense. I mean, it might not have made sense. There are things we do now that don't make sense, quite frankly, even given the fact that they fit with our time frame.
Right.
But there are some things where like it made sense at a point in time because of where the world was at that point in time, but now it doesn't.
Or where society was at the time. Like,
yes.
You think of, like, I feel that society used to be a lot more, not necessarily in the humanity and the people living within society, but the general scope of society. It looked a certain way. And like, you know, there were certain time periods where it's like, if you didn't ride the conveyor belt, if you know, got divorced, like those, like there were certain things that were, right, like you were socially shunned and you couldn't be yourself, and you couldn't just do what worked for you. You had to do what worked for the bigger machine, almost.
Or you believed that you did. And I think this is the thing, is that of course there, and interestingly enough, some, even at times where it maybe seemed like we had to do things a certain way, it's only through people stepping outside of that we've actually learned that wasn't the case, that things are now different. So and there are these kind of patterns of behavior that tend to get passed on generationally, as well as this like social pressure that things are supposed to look a certain way or be done a certain way. And especially with like the increase in media and the increase in social media and being able to see people like doing things, I think that it can work both ways. Like in one respect, it can like reinforce these beliefs that there are certain ways of doing things and certain ways that you shouldn't do things. And in other ways, it can open up possibilities of like, oh, I didn't know that was even a possibility, because you see something being done differently. So I think it works in kind of two different ways. But I think you're right that a lot of time that things get passed on and we believe that there are certain ways we have to do things.
And that there is a this or that. Like, I feel like we're kind of conditioned into thinking that there are two options, and we're not even thinking about the options. It's just like, these are the two things that, almost like these are the two things that are present. So
right, exactly,
it's this or that. And it's like,
and I think a really good example of this is relationships. And I'm not going to say whether there is a good or a bad to this, because I think that there are pros and cons to all of what I'm about to say. So I'm just like caveating this to be like, I'm not saying that this is the best thing necessarily. I'm also don't think it's the worst thing. Is that there was a point in time where it was like, you were either you were single, you were dating, or you were married. Like that, like there was a point in history where that was true. And that dating period was normally very, very short. Like a lot of times, like people would be engaged within 6 months, married within a year. And so it was like, and divorce wasn't even considered as an option at that point in time. It was like single, dating, married, or courting, married.
Widowed. That would be the other one. Like
yes, absolutely. And now there's all these different versions of what a relationship can look like. Like you could be in a, like non-exclusive. So you could be dating lots of different people. You could be in a situation where maybe you are in a relationship, but not married. You might be in a relationship and have an open relationship where each party is able to be with other people. You could be in a polyamorous relationship where you're intentionally choosing to be with multiple partners. You could be in a marriage, but also marriage looks very different to the way that it used to. Like some people can be married and live in different houses. People can be married and live and have different rooms, where a lot of time previously it was like assumed there was one bedroom and that was how it was supposed to be done. and see your your
I just had two thoughts come in simultaneously, and they're a little off, but I'll say them anyway because they're present. It's funny because I'm thinking like my husband and I, like, our lifestyle is different, so like it doesn't look the way you'd say typical looks. And there are 2 points where it really stands out, one of which is at my wedding. And one of my uncles approached me and they're like, "Where's Joe?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know, probably smoking cigars with the guys, like I don't care." Like, and I'm on the dance floor doing my thing, and he's like, "What do you like, he's not here, like right next to you?" I'm like, "Oh God, that sounds awful." Like, he doesn't want to be on the dance floor. Like, and I was in my like best dancey jam mode, and like, trust me, my husband can get down. However, like, he wanted, like, this wasn't like our, like, this was a celebration of our love.
There are certain circumstances and certain situations where Joe will like bust a move, and like, and that wasn't one of them. Like,
right. And for a wedding, like, there's this ideology that like the bride and the groom have to be together the entire time because it's like it's about their marriage. And I'm like, no, this is about celebrating like our love and enjoying the people around us. Like, if he wants to go and smoke a cigar, by all fucking means,
and also
let him
celebrating your relationship as it is, because if you and Joe were out for an evening, you'd be on the dance floor and he'd be somewhere on the sidelines just observing, doing his own thing. Like, why would that be any different on your wedding day than it is every other day of the, like, why would you do it differently? But that's because there's expectations that's how it's supposed to look. Right. And you would say that there was another one?
Yeah, the other example is there have been periods where Joe has traveled when I was at home, and we're talking like when he did the Appalachian Trail, like he was gone for a significant period of time. And when we were in transition between leaving Key West and starting this new lifestyle, there was like, it was like a 4-month period where we didn't get to see each other. And people were like, "Oh my God, like I could never," or like there's something like there was everybody had their thoughts on it. Very few people were like, "Oh, that's cool that you're able to just do that." And it's like, well, that's what works. Like, we don't have to be attached at the hip to know that we're married, to know we're in a committed relationship, to know these things. It's like, he doesn't have to be here for this. And we're accomplishing different, like we had goals that we were accomplishing and they didn't actually line up at that point. Not that we were disjointed as a couple, but it's like stuff needed to get done in different states. Stuff needed to get done in Key West. And it's like, all right, let's conquer and divide. And that works for us. And I get it doesn't work for everybody. But there was like, those were 2 points that just really stand out specifically in the relationship realm where I'm like, but why does it like, and I say this knowing that this isn't like, but why does it have to look like that? Like, why can't we be happily married and not be like helicoptering each other's lives? Like, like, oh, just the thought of that, like that doesn't work for me. Like,
no,
or him.
Wouldn't work for either of you. Yeah.
No.
Well, and the other example that kind of naturally kind of leads me on to is like housing and like accommodation and where you live. Like, the assumption is that you either live with family or you rent or you own, or you may have like some kind of like social housing, like a situation like that. But people don't think there's lots of other ways of doing it. Like, you could get a job where housing is part of your job. Like, so you get housing as part of that. You could have your house on wheels and take it around with you, like Serena and Joe do. You could live as a house sitter, like I did, where I traded basically taking care of the home and the animals in return for staying in somebody's home while they weren't there. There's all these different ways of doing it, but we have there's only these kind of few options that exist because that's what the majority of people do. And the irony of all of this is that we know, because of the work that we do, while the core needs are the same for the majority of people, how people like to get those needs met is incredibly different. And can be different from other people, can be different for the same person at different times. There was something when you were talking about the way that somebody's done something might be different. Like what works for one person might not work for another person. What works for one person at one point may not work for the same person at another point in time. There's all these like, and we see how unique people are. We see how unique people's needs are. And the belief that a certain way of doing things is going to work for the majority of people, quite frankly, is laughable, knowing what we do and how we do it. And the realization that this expectation that there are only that there's a set way of doing things, and that set way of doing things gives a couple of options, and those options look a certain way, and that certain way is going to work for everybody. I mean, it's fucking ridiculous. Quite frankly, it really is. It is beyond ludicrous.
Yourself out loud.
Like, I never really thought about it in quite those terms. But
this is how my grandpappy did it.
Right.
Okay.
And it's like, this is the expectation that gets passed on to or foisted onto us in terms of like, it gets pushed onto us by, as I said, the media, society. And you've just got to look at some of the things where people are being judged for doing things differently. It's like, they're not bothering anybody. Leave them the fuck alone if it works for them. Like, it's not hurting them. They're not hurting them or anybody else. Leave them the fuck alone. And so, and I think that it's one of the things that is really, really like, it's very important to me. It's very kind of dear to my heart, is this kind of finding and creating what works, whether you've seen it done before or not. Because I remember, like, I was having this conversation with my one of my nephews is at a point where he's like choosing between subjects, like in terms of like what he's going to study. And there's so much pressure on him. And I remember when I was at that point in my life where it was like, it felt like if I made a wrong choice at this point in time, I was going to be doomed for the rest of eternity, in terms of whether, like, I was going to live a miserable life because I wasn't going to have the right things to be able to do the things I wanted to do. And I remember when I went to go and I went to a careers advice thing. And I use that term very, very loosely. Because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to be, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And I went in, and at that point I was considering being a lawyer, and I was considering other things as well. And this person like tried to talk me out of the lawyer thing seriously. And I was like, well, okay. And they gave me some other options. And I'm like, nothing really resonated with me. And then they ended the session going, I think you should be a lawyer. I think you make a very good lawyer. I'm like, you just spent the last 40 minutes trying to talk me out of it. What the hell? Like, well, the reality is what I do for a living didn't exist at that point in time. What we do for a living never existed before we started. I mean, there are people who do similar things to what we do, but this didn't exist because we've created it. And I didn't know it was possible to live as a house sitter. And I didn't know it was possible, not just possible, but like you kind of know it's possible that people like grow up and they maybe move to another country and everything. I didn't realize how possible that was. And I didn't realize how possible it was to do the kind of work that I did, because it didn't exist at that point. And so I kind of feel like I've done it the hard way, where at every step along my life, I've had to fight hard against this kind of belief in the way that I should do things and the way that my life should look, because everybody else expected it to look a certain way. And I'm like, well, what if I tried this? And what if I tried that? And all of a sudden I'm living this life that nobody even believed was possible, least of all me.
Well, and they look at it. I mean, for both of us in our lifestyles, people are like, they look at us and they're like, yeah, I could never do that. And I'm like, you absolutely could. It will not look like this. Like, it's not going to look the way that it does for either of us because of those specific situations. However, like, you can create something that like embodies the same thing that we do. And that's like, it breaks my heart when I hear people say stuff like, I could never do that. And it's like right there, it's like they shut that off as even being a possibility instead of being like, what are the options to get me, like, maybe it doesn't look like this, but like, I can get a little closer to that. I can.
Right. Well, and how many people's needs are being chronically compromised because they don't even see the other options that are available. And they assume that the options that they can see are supposed to look a certain way. And so they kind of put themselves into that box of like, okay, I've got to choose between this and that. I don't really like that one, so I'm going to choose this one. And I put myself in this, and I'm like, and you can see them like kind of getting onto the inside of it and going, what the fuck is this? Like, I mean, how did I end up here? But I don't want that option either. So I guess this is it. I've got to make the best of it. I've just got to suck it up and this is life. Like, how many people are like, well, that's life. And it's like, doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Really doesn't have to be.
Well, and the thing is too, I think that we kind of get it from, we get like a dual pressure of what it's supposed to look like, and you know that the options are this or that because that's what we've been told, and we have this like external like judgment and conditioning, but then we have what's going on in our head. So even if we're like, oh, it can look different, like you have to actively like stop your brain conditioning from being like, nope. Because there was a while, like when Claire and I first met.
Come from? Where's that conditioning come from? That's conditioning has come from that repeated outside conditioning that has then now become your own in a dialogue or in a monologue rather.
Like when Claire and I first met, there were things she'd say, and I'd be like, my brain would be like, nope, nope. You know, you could try it this way.
True.
Nope. Like. And like, it wasn't even like I wanted to. I'm like, okay, there were moments of clarity where I'm like, oh, this stuff makes so much sense. Like I knew, and I was watching it, like I was watching it work in front of me via watching Claire, but my brain, without me even knowing, was like swatting out ideas. We've talked about when I came to kind of the crossroads with my career, and it was like, it actually isn't, like the amount of times I swatted that idea before I'm like, wait, this actually could be an option, or it could look like this. And then when we started like, you know, doing this, like, okay, well, how can, what are the options? What actually are the options? We came to this thing where it's like, okay, well, I can ease out this way. So it like, I don't feel like I'm impacting myself or the company in the negative way that like I was so about. And that it got me to a point where I was independent and then could switch my position over to somebody else. Like there was months of my brain smacking that, like, it's like smacking the ball out of somebody's hands, and you can hear that, like the basketball hit, like tink, and it's like, nope, every time. And then when we got past that, it was like, holy shit! And it could look this way, and this is the way I'm going to do it. And if this didn't quite work, remember all those other possibilities we talked about, like a slight pivot, and it was like, and I still have all these options if this doesn't work, which was amazing. Instead of being like, I quit my job, I don't quit my job.
Right. And I remember like there were certain points in the process, both with that and with other things, where I could see you were so locked in. Like there were moments where I didn't even offer things. I didn't ask questions. I didn't make suggestions because I'm like, yeah, we're not there yet. Like, I could see how like, no, this is it. And this is how it's supposed to be. And this is what I'm doing. And I'm sticking with it. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm just going to carry on doing me over here. And then every now and again, like something, like I'd see a little chink open up and I'd be like, ooh, I'll ask a little question there. And then that like chink would open a little bit. And I'm like, okay. Then there'd be like a little chink over here. And I'm like, oh, let's ask another question there. And I'm that would open up. And this is what we talk about, like when we talk about the empowerment ecosystem and about being in supporter mode. Like that was me in supporter mode. Like I knew Serena was in creator mode. She just didn't know that she was in creator mode yet. And so all I did was in those moments where there was an opening, I would ask a question that would help her like step more into creator mode and more consciously into creator mode. Like where she would, I would ask a question. She was like, oh, and she would then start coming up with options, or she would start thinking about things slightly differently.
And that was a very important thing in the process of first kind of dipping my toe into options and creator mode and all of that. And just in general, like you can give somebody 10,000 options, but if they didn't create that option, if they weren't part of the creation of it, it doesn't land as much always.
Well, I'm going to say it's not necessarily that if they didn't come up with it, if they aren't truly engaged with the process and open to the possibility of it. Because there have been lots of times where I've thrown noodles at the wall and thrown ideas at you, and because you're engaged in it, you're like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Because you're open to it at that point. I think that it's more that you can't force somebody to be there, like if they're not there. And at that point, like there were points in the process where I could have literally detailed the exact circumstances that happened. I could have literally said, well, I could have given you an option that was the option you ended up taking, but because you weren't yet open to the fact that that was a real possibility, and you were so afraid subconsciously of how that option could have negatively impacted your needs, and we had to have that conversation about realizing that actually it was costing your needs more than supporting your needs. Like, until you got to that point in the process, you would have shut that shit down. And if I'd offered that to you prior to, and you'd gone, no, that's not going to work for me, it would have been harder for you to have accepted the possibility of it when you eventually got to the point where like you were open to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Like we said, that was exactly when I was in that nope period. I'm like,
yeah,
nope, work. And it is hard to come back to something that somebody said, you know, days, weeks, months, years ago, and you're like, fuck, that is an option, isn't it? And to like go into your brain and be like, it's okay that you didn't take that option or you didn't consider that option at that point because you weren't there. And I think that was a big thing for me looking back. Yeah. It's like there's so much stuff I know now that I had heard long before. A lot of stuff coming from the other person on screen where it's like, there's no I told you so. There's none of that energy, but it's like, yep, that always was an option. Looking back and be like, okay, like, sometimes options are there and it's not the right time and you can come back and that's still it's a good option for where you're at. So I want people to make sure they're realizing like it's nothing to
something to be ashamed about.
A lot of times it comes with shame, like, oh, if I it's like admitting they were right, and it's like that's not what it's about in these types of relationships.
And even internally, I can see people being like, I think that there were times when you eventually made the choice you did and stepped into it, where there was a part of you like, why the fuck did I not do this sooner? And the truth of the matter is you weren't there sooner. And like judging yourself as being wrong for not having made this decision sooner. The truth of the matter is, if you'd done it sooner and you weren't in the right place for it, it probably wouldn't have worked, and you would have then like burned that path in your mind. You wouldn't have actually, you could have come back to it at any point in time, but mentally you would have been like, well, no, that doesn't work. That's not going to work. And therefore, and so I've got to find another way of doing it. So, and I think that that's a lot of the time where like maybe we're not at the right point in our journey to make those decisions. So when we are in these places where we are feeling stuck, where we are feeling like we're caught between two options and those both options feel shitty and neither of them feel like the one that we want to do, the most important thing for us to do is to step into creator mode and enact our personal power. And what I mean by that is that you want to step into creator mode by looking at, okay, what is my outcome here? Like before you even really think too much about what the options are, first of all, you want to be clear. What is your outcome? Because it's very difficult to assess options well if you're not clear on what your outcome is and what's the most important, what's the highest priority at that point in time. We had a situation recently where we were dealing with a supplier that had not fulfilled on what they were supposed to deliver to us. And what we were trying to figure out is, what's our most important thing? Is it most important for us to get a refund on this situation, or is it more important to maintain the relationship going forward? And depending on which one of those we are erring towards will change how the options of how we approach, how we the options we take in what our next steps are. So you first thing is you want to be really clear on what your outcome is. And the second thing is that when you know what your outcome is, then you want to start coming up with options. And we've talked about this before. We've talked about the noodles against the wall. And we've talked about like throwing every possibility out there and seeing because so often when we're not used to doing this, it can seem like those are the two, like, it's like there's only two options and these are it. Like, that's it. And it's like, well, is it possible that there's another one? Like, what else can you see out in the world? What other things can you see people doing that might suggest there might be something? Like, look for inspiration everywhere as to what the other possibilities are. And then a second you were in that place where you're like, okay, I feel like I've got a good number of options, then you enact your personal power by choosing the one that feels most resonant for where you are right now. And the key thing with this is you choose the first step that is most resonant with where you are. You don't have to worry about the 99th step yet, because what can end up happening is people go, well, if I take a first step down here, I'm going in this direction, which means I'm going to end up all the way down there. You've only taken one step. If you carried on taking steps in that direction, yes, you would end up there. And you could take a step here, you could take it, then you could take it, you take a step forward, and then you could take a step to the left, and you could take a step back, and you take a step to the right. You could end up right where you began if you really wanted to, by taking different steps. And just because you've started in one direction doesn't mean to say that that is the direction you have to stay committed to. In fact, the more open you stay to just, we talked about it a couple of episodes ago in terms of, like, we were just talking about, like, just one small thing. Remember, this is just one small step. And if we focus on just one small step at a time, that actually, I think, opens up our minds as to the fact that every time we take a small step, unless there's a wall behind us or a hole to the left of us or a wall in front of us, there's actually any one of a number of different directions we could take from that one small step. And we can take another small step in another direction. And then we look at that position we're in right now and go, okay, what directions could I travel? Could I step from this position? And that's how you end up carving a path that actually works for you, versus saying, well, I've taken one step on this path now. I mean, can you imagine if you were like, if you were like taking a journey and you took a wrong turn and you're like, well, I've taken a wrong turn now and it's a 2-hour journey. I've got to go 2 hours down this journey. And at that point, then I can decide I'm going somewhere else. That's ludicrous when you think about it in those terms. But that's in effect what we're doing when we say, well, we've taken this step, we committed to it now we have to continue.
Well, and the thing is, like, life is constantly changing. Like, I don't know about anybody listening, but I can speak clearly from myself and for Claire.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I mean, what is present today might not be present tomorrow, and the decision I make today with all my options,
literally,
usually literally right now, it's like you find yourself like. We're going to do an episode on this eventually, but like I find myself pivoting a lot, and there's times where that's good. There's times where I need to calm that down a little bit, but I always have that choice, and to be like, okay, I made a decision based on what I wanted to create. And there's, usually something bigger. Sometimes it's what do I want to create in this very moment? I take that step and it's like, oh, here I am. Other times it's a little bit of a longer journey, but each step I take is another set of options, like Claire said. And you might go as the crow flies to that, whatever you wanted to create. And that might be the best option for you to be like, okay, it looks like this. And oh, that actually looks, kind of like the standard, quote unquote, of how it should look. But most of the time I find in my own journeys towards what I want to create, it's like I'm here and then I'm like, and now this is actually a better option because it's a Tuesday and the wind is blowing from the west. So I'm going to go here, and it's Thursday, and it's like, oh, well, the west winds on Tuesday aren't really serving me. So I'm actually going to go this way. And then all of a sudden you're at your goal and your outcome or whatever you're trying to create. And you're like, oh. And that felt good along the way because you're doing it in the way that works for you, not like it's not
based on
I'm
conditions.
Here and I have this goal or this outcome. It's I'm here and I'm enjoying the journey to my destination rather than just being on the journey to get there.
It very much feels like sailboat living. Like as most people who listen may know, I lived on a sailboat for a couple of months at the end of last year with some friends of mine who permanently live on a sailboat. And on a sailboat, you are constantly reassessing. You are constantly looking at, I mean, I remember when they first started to show me the charts and everything and like how they plan their journeys. And there's so many things that you have to consider that you would like, until you've done it, you would have no clue the amount that goes into this, where it's like you're looking at it and you're going, okay, so what is the direction of the wind? What is the direction of the current? What is the wave height going to be? And if the wave height is at this, so it's not just that big waves are bad. Big waves in a certain direction with a certain direction of wind are bad. But actually big waves in another, when you're going in another direction, actually they don't feel that, they feel pretty non-existent because of the direction of travel you're going. And it's like, we had a decision that, I mean, this is a great example of this, where it's like, when I left Key West, I was like, I've got some options on what I do right now, because I need to get away from the island. And I reached out to these friends of mine, and going on the boat was an option. And I was like, hey, fancy a boat mate for a couple of months? And they're like, yeah, sure, come along. And we got on there, and I remember we were supposed to sail and pick up a friend of ours who was joining us for the journey. And then we were supposed to sail down to the Caribbean. And we were constantly watching the weather. And there was a point where for 7 days, we could have had great sailing weather in the direction of the Caribbean. And on day 8, it would have been horrific. And 9 and 10. And it's like, yeah, I mean, what it ended up happening was that we ended up having to keep making changes and keep making pivots. If we'd said, well, we said we're going to go to the Caribbean and we're going to go on this day, to hell with it. I mean, I don't know what that would have looked like, but it wouldn't have been fun. That's for sure. And part of me was disappointed, because I really wanted to sail with them to the Caribbean. That was the whole point of the trip. For me, that was what the plan was going to be. And we ended up not happening. And I ended up like, oh God, now what do I do? And everything. It ended up meaning that I went back and spent like 2 or 3 months with my family that I otherwise wouldn't have got. And I'm so grateful that I did that. Was that what I had planned out? No. Was it ideal, or did it seem ideal at the time? No. But actually, at every point in the time, and they got to the point where I was like, okay, I now have to make a decision. They were still going to the Caribbean, but my time had changed, and the demands had changed on me. So I was like, okay, based on now, what is the best thing to do? Like, if you'd asked me 2 weeks earlier, sailing to them in the Caribbean, definitely the right choice. Mm-hmm. But at that point in time, there was a different choice that was better, which was me going and spending time with my family. And that's what I did.
And there were many options in that too. Like we sat there, and it's like, you could stay where you are. You could go to this area of Florida. You could do this. You could do this. And it was,
I could have still gone with them to the Caribbean and then flown back a couple of days after getting there. Like, there were so many options. And the option that seemed like the option I was going to take at the beginning of the journey was very different to the option that I took at the end of the journey. And I think that I think there's 2 things that cause a lot of problems for people who, when they're in these positions and they're trying to make choices. The first is assuming that there are, or seeing that there are 2 options in front of you, but assuming what those options look like, and saying, okay, I've got this option and that option, but believing that the options have to look the way that everybody else says that they have to look. So like we were talking about in terms of like, if you're married, being married or being divorced. And it's like, well, yes, technically from at that point, if you are married to somebody, there's staying married to them and there's choosing not to be married to them anymore. That's legitimate that there are 2 options in front of you. But the problem is that people assume what the married option looks like and what the divorce option looks like, and so they feel stuck between those versions of those options. And they don't realize that they can take those options and create those options to look the way that they would want them to. So I've had clients in the past, so for example, who have been in this position, and what we've done is we've looked at how is the marriage, the relationship meeting the needs? How is it costing the needs? And are there ways for them to adapt and change the way they do married life in a way that better supports both people's needs? And that could be living in separate rooms. It could be living in separate houses. It could be living in separate countries. It could be like, you don't have to live in the same house, in the same room if you're a married couple. And sometimes you can. That's an option. And I think that so often when I kind of start putting these sort of options out, like and throwing ideas out for different ways it could look, you can see people going almost like, "Wait, we could do that. That's allowed." It's like, yeah, there's not the marriage police that comes on and goes, "Are you 2 sleeping in the same bed every single night?" In which case, yes, you're allowed, or no, you're not. Like, that's not how it works.
I mean, it's kind of ironic. Like, I'm thinking back in the day, like, I mean, my yaya and Papu still had this when I would, like, to the time they passed, but in the same room, two separate beds. That used to be the
Yeah.
standard for married couples. And if you had one bed or your beds were pushed together, like, oh, you dirty, people, like, there was such like an ideal around it. Like, that's the way it looked. And then I feel like one day, like, some people put together their beds and all of a sudden people are like, oh, we can sleep in the same bed. Well, that, like,
Well, and then the flip side of that is that now, if people want to sleep in separate beds, so many people are like, well, that's weird. Like, why would you do that? Like, why? So it's like, it's ironic that the same thing is viewed as weird from two different directions when it comes to the exact same thing. It's this social expectation around what it's supposed to look like.
What really bothers me, and I'm totally guilty of this, and more so in my past than in my present. What do you, oh, you got a hair?
Sorry, I realized that there was something out the corner of my eye that kept like, what? I'm like, what is that? And because I've got it's quite warm here, so I mean it's the tropics in the middle of summer, and I've got a fan going, and I could see this thing, and it was one of my hairs that got like wrapped around the microphone, so I was like trying to pull it off without touching the microphone, and therefore making a weird noise. Yeah, that's what I was doing. So
Okay.
Sorry for the distraction.
That's okay. Oh, maybe it's not okay. I mean, it is okay, but we're going to get my brain back there. So I remember there's a specific situation before I even met my husband. There was a couple and they were having issues. So there was something there, but they slept in different rooms. And I like it. In my mind, I was like, oh, they're getting divorced. Like, I had this entire story in my head about how fucked up their relationship was because they had to be in separate rooms and all this stuff. And like, who knows? Like, I mean, I do know because I knew I know the backstory now, but it's like in that moment, like, who the fuck am I to judge that or to even have any sort of opinion on somebody's sleeping arrangements? Like, I'd say probably 8 times out of 10, my husband and I aren't going to sleep at the same time. Like, he's asleep on the couch and I go to bed or vice versa or something like that. And there are people who have had like, oh, you don't go to bed together? And it's like, no, like we don't, it's bedtime, lights out for the entire, like for everybody. Like if I lie in bed and I'm not there, I'm not going to sleep because my brain is going to take me on a journey of epic proportions when my eyes are
Magical
closed.
Mystery Tour.
Yeah, like I'll think about like that one time in 3rd grade when that thing we're like and that's the like we have this image and this is like it looks like
it was one of the biggest things that when I was like, if you don't know this already, I worked as a relationship specialist for about 7 or 8 years. That was like my main focus. And it was one of the biggest revelations, I think, to the majority of my clients is your relationship is your relationship. You can create it to look any way you want. But we've got this such an idea, like cookie cutter idea in our mind about like, this is what a relationship is and this is how it needs to look. And when you start to go, I mean, I've got Serena's like voice in my head, like when we talk about being put in a box and Serena's like, fuck your box, like fuck your cookie cutter, like that, try saying that 10 times fast. That's a difficult one to say, but it's like if you like break or bend the cookie cutter and go, actually, why do we need to cut the cookies in a certain shape? Why don't we freehand it with a knife? We could put it in a ball, like we could like it doesn't matter what it looks like. What matters is, does it support our needs? Like when we're talking about a relationship, is it supporting the needs of both people, and is it supporting the needs of the relationship? Is it like, and I think that's the thing, is that because a lot of people aren't very good at communicating and because people aren't very good at connecting, they assume that the only way to make sure that happens is you have to live in the same house and sleep in the same bed. And it's like, well, actually, no, if you are really good at communicating and really good at connecting, you could look it could look any one of a number of different ways, as long as we're still doing those things and we're creating the things that are going to support the needs of the relationship and the needs of the individuals in it.
Another place where this is super present in kind of this realm is when it comes to divorce. I am a child of divorce myself. I have many friends who are the same, and many friends who as adults are divorced and have children. And especially when there is a child in it, it changes I mean, a lot of people you can divorce. Well, actually, no, divorce in general. Like I've had many friends who have divorced and they're still best friends with the person that they were in a relationship with, because it wasn't about like the dissolution of marriage. Was just like, we make better friends than we do a couple, so let's do what serves us. And people, how can you still be friends with your ex like that? And it's like, well, because
it's the assumption there has to be a lot of animosity around divorce. Like, it's an assumption again.
Or like you have a child involved and it's like, well, it looks like, well, now it has to be two separate families. Now it has to be this. Like, there's so much of that in society today. And where there was a point where it seems as though there was a point where divorce was kind of shunned upon in the general of society. And I feel like now it's more accepted and, it's more prevalent. However, like, it can look whatever way looks best for you and your child and the other person involved. And there's a way to make it. It might not be exactly what works for you. It might not be exactly what works for the other parent. The focus here should be the child. There is a middle ground that's going to work for that child. And chances are it's not.
I think that there's an assumption about what works for the child in that situation. I think that's a lot of the time also what's a problem is that what we don't realize is that, like, people say, oh, a child needs two parents, and divorce, like, we have to stay together for the child. If you are living in a household where there is constant animosity between two people, constant arguments, constant issues, that's far worse for a child than having two happier homes that are separate, that you work it out together. And it doesn't need to look again the way that I knew somebody years ago where they had divorced and they chose to still live in the same house as separate people. Like, they still had they all lived under the same roof still. And not because they had to, not because it was like, we're doing this for the good of the child. And they figured out a way of being friends and cohabiting, and they were seeing other people. It wasn't like it was like, well, we're not going to see anybody else because that would be weird and awkward. They figured out how to make it work in a way that worked for their family. I think it was awesome. And not your average person's not going to think about that as being an option. They're going to be like, no, divorce.
And that wouldn't work for every relationship.
No.
Like, that's, and I think that's the thing, knowing like, okay, I've seen it done this way, and I actually like that option. Yes. And what are the options within that option that will make that option actually feasible for me and my life and the other people involved in it? Because I think we kind of see what it could look like sometimes. We're like, okay, well, it doesn't have to be this or that. It could be that too. And it's like, you, without even realizing it, you're like, well, this is this cookie cutter. Okay, we're doing this. And it's like, take the option that you see and be like, is there something else that will work even better than this? Like,
absolutely. And I think sometimes what can help with that is is almost to get into like a fantasy land, like mindset, which is like, in my fantasy land, what would this look like? Like, if I could have it any way I want it to be, there were no holds barred, what would that look like? Because sometimes it helps you, it takes you outside of those restrictions of what you think it has to look like, and go, well, in an ideal world, I would like to do this and this and this. And you go, oh, well, I could do that. And there will be a way of doing, and it opens up possibilities for us. And I go on.
I think that's a really important aspect of it, is creating from the fact that things are possible. And as you were saying that, I kind of like started smiling. I'm like, yeah, that is how, like, you start with that fantasy and you're like, I'd like it to look like this, and you kind of take a step back from that fantasy realm and you're like, it could look like that, and you're like, I could actually get here by doing this, this, and this.
Or what parts of the fantasy are possible? Because it may not be that they're all possible, but you could be like, oh, but I could do this, 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 and that. They're all part of that, and I can't have that right now, and that's okay. But I could have this, this, and this, because if I did it this way, it would incorporate those things. And I think that's the thing, is like, again, it's not an all or nothing. It's like, either I've got my fantasy or I haven't. Like I was saying at the beginning, right? We're looking at apartment hunting right now. I have written down the list of things in an ideal world, what I would like, what my dream place would look like, and what it would have, and the things it would incorporate. I'm not looking at apartments going, if it doesn't have all of these things, it's an absolute no. But it means I'm clear on the things that I would like. And it's like, and I saw a place literally on Saturday where I was like, okay, there's a few things on my list it doesn't have. Those are things I could do without. Hold on a second. There's this one thing that is a deal breaker. So that is something that I can't, it doesn't work for me to compromise on that one thing. But I think that the clearer we are on the things that we want and the things that are going to matter to us, and realizing what are the deal breaker elements the things we absolutely have to have as part of this. And what are the things where it's like, okay, this is like, that doesn't matter if that doesn't happen. Okay, in an ideal world, it would, but it's okay because I've got this, and this, and those are the really important aspects of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the thing with this is that there's I said there's these two things with it. The first is like seeing these two options and going, I don't like either of those options, because we assume what those options have to look like. The other thing is only seeing these two options because that's what society has presented us with, or that's what everybody else is doing, and going, well, those are the only options that are available, rather than taking that and going, okay, what else could be possible? What other options might there be? And starting to look at it and go, okay, yes, here are two options. These are two possibilities. What else is there out there? And that's when, like, Serena's talking about, like, that spider chart of like, okay, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, it could be. And that's the point at which this kind of noodles on the wall idea of like, okay, just throw everything at it, because you never know what you might come up with. And you might see things like, I think it's really helpful to throw noodles at the wall that you don't think will stick, because sometimes like half of it sticks and you go, oh, I didn't think any of that was going to stick. Okay, maybe I throw another noodle and another half sticks. It's like, oh, if I put those two halves together, that might be something. And I think like let's use an analogy for these two different things. So imagine that you've prepared what you're going to eat for the week, and you've decided that you've got things in to make tacos and to make burgers. And what ends up happening is that you look at it and you go, I don't want tacos or burgers tonight. The first scenario in this is where you assume what tacos means and you assume what a burger means, because in your mind, tacos means ground meat, sour cream, cheese, guac, salsa in a shell. That's it. And a burger means burger bun, burger patty, cheese, a little bit of onion, pickle, and some sauce. And the problem is you don't want either of those. But what you could do is you could say, well, actually, is there another way I could do tacos? Like maybe I want to do chicken in my tacos rather than ground beef. Maybe there's a great recipe that I have for Asian steak tacos. We actually had it a couple of years ago for a special occasion. I don't know whether it might have been Christmas or my birthday or something. I don't remember.
Like that.
And you use like Asian like condiments and spices, and you put radishes in it, and it was like it was still a taco of sorts, but it was so different to a usual taco. And the same thing when it comes to burgers. When you think about all the different fixings you can put on a burger, like you could put I don't know why I was about to say marshmallows. I mean, you could. There's nothing stopping you.
Especially in my travels, I've seen some things on burgers, and there's like, I mean, there are shock value things, and it's like, okay, it's almost like those built up Bloody Marys. There's a whole chicken on your burger. It's like, that's a bit intense. But like macaroni and cheese buns or donut buns and stuff, like you can, like, one of my favorite burgers was a surprise to me. I was traveling in New Orleans, and there was a peanut butter burger. Before peanut butter burgers became like, they've kind of like with the foodie element that our society has, like they're more known now. And it was one of those things I was like, ew, that's gross. I'm going to try it. It's how my mind works. And it was never would have thought. It was like, it was salty, but it was savory, and it had so much bacon on it. And then the bacon with the peanut, oh my God, it was so good. And like, right. I never would have considered that as an option before. But then when it was an option for me, I'm like, oh, okay, we'll leave the onion off of this, because I don't think that's going to be. And like, I was able to make it so it was what I want it.
That would be my little alarm reminding me to meet my needs. There we go. Appropriate that it went off while we were recording. Yeah, like when I was traveling recently, I had a Korean barbecue burger. I mean, it was still a burger patty, but there was Korean barbecue sauce on it. There was like a spicy coleslaw. There were like pickled cucumbers on it. And again, technically it was a burger, but it was a very different burger than the one that you would imagine in your mind if you were thinking burger. So you can have these two options and you can see what variations there are in those options and make those options that you have the version of those options that works best for you and works best for your needs. The other thing you can do is you can create other options from the ingredients that you have for a taco and a burger. So you could look at it and go, well, I have these ingredients now. What could I do with that? So for example, like I often will make a burger wrap. Like I won't use a burger bun. Like I'll put the fixing for a burger into a wrap and it's different, but I enjoy that as like something that's different. But you could take the ground beef from the taco and you could mix it with the cheese from over here and you could add the red onions from it. Like you could take the components of those options and come up with a third option that is different to what the original two options were. You could also add other ingredients. You could go, what else do I have in my cupboard right now that I could use and add something to the ingredients I have in front of me that again comes up with another option, like alternatively. Like you could take mac and cheese and add the ground beef to it and it gives it another dimension that's different to what you originally thought.
Or I have all the fixings for the burger. I actually don't want a burger, but wait, I also have all the fixings for a salad. Like, let me just create it in a different way. Ooh, I have some croutons and some dressing. Like, great. There's the meal that resonates more than the burger for me.
Right. And then the other option you have is to go, if neither of these options work for me, like we get so stuck in like, here are the two options I have in front of me. Well, maybe I freeze the burger patties and I decide to go out to a restaurant to eat, or I decide to go to the store because there's something else that I would like that's none of these options that I can go out and I can create something completely different rather than just being like stuck in here are the only two options that are available to me. Once you go to the grocery store, I mean, the issue I have at a grocery store is narrowing down the options because there's so many available to me. And it's like, could literally make anything with what's in this store right now. And then you start to narrow down the options a little bit. And it's like, well, okay. It helps sometimes when you have certain dietary requirements. It's like, well, first of all, it has to be vegan for me. So I'm like, that already counts out half the store. So I'm like, okay, we're narrowing the field a little bit. But I think that's the thing is that it's so important for us to recognize where are we keeping ourselves stuck and where are we limiting ourselves by either what we assume an option will look like or assuming that those are the only options that are available to us. And by dropping into creator mode, and this is why we always say, like, it's so important to get into creator mode. It also is really important to recognize what needs am I trying to meet by doing this? Because if you get down to the need level and go, actually, I'm trying to meet my emotional experience expression need, or I'm trying to meet my love and connection need, there might be other ways of meeting those same needs that don't need either of the options that you've seen in front of you. So I think if you can start to get into either get down to the need level and look at, okay, what are other ways I can meet this need? Or look at the situation and say, okay, what is my actual outcome here? Because yes, technically I could do this and do that, but how I do this or do that will be very different depending on my outcome. So it's like, if my outcome is I really want something, and going back to the analogy, if I want to eat something that's spicy, how I have a burger or how I have a taco is going to be very different. How I put that taco together, how I put the burger together is going to be different if I want something that's spicy than if I want something that feels like comforting. And like, so it's like getting clear on what our outcome is and then looking at how do we, one, decide what options are available by throwing those noodles at the wall and seeing what sticks and seeing, okay, now from the noodles, I've thrown all these noodles at the wall. Let's look at the wall. Let's see what has stuck to the wall and then choose and start to narrow down from the noodles I have that are actually sticking in this situation. And then when I look at it and go, okay, so that is the option I'm going for. Well, what's my outcome when it comes to this option? how could I do this option in a way that really works for me, that really supports my needs? Of course, we want to do it in a self-first way, in a way that at the minimum, that meets our needs in a way that at the minimum doesn't negatively impact somebody else and sometimes benefits other people. But what are the ways of doing this that are going to meet my needs even better? What are the things I maybe haven't considered? What in a fantasy world would this option look like to me? And it's amazing once you start to look at things from that point of view, the possibilities it opens up. And when you start to get into possibilities, this can seem like it might feel like a little overwhelming to begin with. Like it might feel like there's a lot to do in this. And it's like, God, I don't even know where to start with this. Just start somewhere. And actually, a lot of the times when you start off with simpler things, it's easier. So if you do it with like things like food or like the direction you're going to go in order to get to work or whatever it is, like if you start off with the simple things and get practice with that, it will become easier and more natural because you get practiced at it. Because we don't even think about the fact that we're doing this half the time, I don't think.
No, and we consistently get where did you come up with that? How did you make this happen? Like we are so out of the box, it still kind of shocks people at times. And it's like, because we gave ourselves all these options and we were clear on what we wanted to do. We've talked about the silent auction that we did for the local nonprofit. And it was like, the outcome was create a successful and good silent auction. And it's like, it could have looked a million different ways, and we considered a million different ways, and we're like, well, this actually works the best. And that's how all this happened.
and to the extent where, I mean, it's been a couple of years since we did our last sort of silent auction like that. It's been well over a year, put it that way. I actually had somebody reach out to me just this weekend to be like, hey, I'm doing this event for something completely different, something that we're not related to in any way, shape or form. And they're like, I'm putting together a silent auction. I remember you did one like a couple of years ago and it was amazing. And it was really good and professional with the QR codes and everything. Any chance I could get together and pick your brain on how you did it? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, we don't gatekeep. Like if we can help other people be as successful in their fundraising as we are by sharing the ways that we do it. And the truth of the matter is, we're never just going to go, well, we did that worked, let's do that again. We're always like, okay, what can we do differently? How can we do it better? What more do we want to do? So like, we're never going to be like just resting on our laurels going, okay, well, we know how to do it.
That works.
Do it now. We do the same thing every single time, because I think that's why a lot of things when it comes to fundraising get really tired, because they find something, it works. And so they just keep doing that same something. And when you do it the first time, it might work. When you do it the 30th time, people are like, okay, well, I kind of know what this looks like now, and I kind of know how it's going to work. And it's like, what other options are there? How else could you do it? And like, it's interesting that what we did like a couple of years ago was so significant. And interestingly enough, I know the person involved. It has been 2 years since the thing that they were talking about, and they still remember it. They know who did it, and they want to know how they can replicate it. And it's like, if we hadn't done that, they wouldn't be thinking that was an option. They wouldn't.
Nobody thought what we pulled off
option.
Was possible.
No,
we were told point blank, like that's not going to happen.
It's not. Yeah, it won't work.
Don't believe us? Just watch.
Just watch. I was just about to say the same thing. And so here's the thing. And the cool thing about this is, the more you do it, the more you inspire other people to do it too. And the more creativity we bring, and the more options, and the more different ways of doing things, and that we can see out there. I wish when I was growing up, I had somebody in my life living the kind of life that I live, because it would have made it so much easier for me, because it would have seemed like an option from the get-go. I had to create all the options as I was going, because nobody was doing it. I mean, I didn't have adult people around me dressing up as fairies and blowing bubbles and like living in other people's houses and working from themselves as a human behavior specialist, helping people with their needs. Like that, none of that existed as I was growing up.
I now have the fairies thing, but like,
right.
Same.
And so the cool thing about this is it creates this ripple effect of need meeting, because when you do it and it meets your needs, and somebody else goes, well, that looks kind of cool, I think that might meet my needs too. That means that they then do it and it meets their needs, and then somebody sees them do it and they go, what if I did this and did this slightly differently? Oh, that works. And then somebody else sees it, and it's this the more that we celebrate difference, the more that we respect and encourage people to do things in the way that works for them rather than just the way that everybody else does it, the better all of our needs will be met, because it opens up options and possibilities for how to meet our needs, and it opens up options and possibilities to inspire others to meet their needs in the ways that really work. Anything else you want to add before we finish up with our options? What's our outcome? Our outcome is to try not create a 3-hour podcast. So therefore, the option we're going to choose is
I am choosing the option to say we're good.
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you very much. We'll be back next week with another episode. Between now and then, remember to stay safe, take care of yourself, and continue to meet your own needs. Lots of love. Bye-bye.
Bye, friends.
That's it for today.
If you like what you heard
and would like to see some of Serena's awesome facial expressions,
check out the video podcast on YouTube.
And remember, if you're feeling stuck, ask yourself the question, is it possible there's another option here?
Well, shit. It really is that simple.